with Sarah Khatib, John O'Leary, Kate Beatty, and myself. Phil cannot make it tonight. So that being said, I'll open the hearing. And the first item we had was minutes, but because Phil isn't here, we'll push that off to next week. Okay. Now, we are having the public hearing for Article 17 in the warrant. Now, this is our first time doing a public hearing on Zoom, maybe a little cumbersome. So what I'm going to ask everybody is to please mute yourself. And what will happen during the hearing is I will open the hearing, I'll read the notice, and I will read all the input we've got from all the boards and committees within the town and what they've had to say. After that's done, I will open it up to the applicant, Cindy and Jack, and they can explain what they are proposing. After that is done, I'll turn it over to our board to ask any questions. And once that's concluded, we will turn it over to the members of the public. And at that point, each and every one of you who wants to speak will get their turn. I would ask that you always want you to identify yourself, but name, first name and last name and address, because a lot of people's names just come up like Steve. Your name just come up as Steve. So we want to get your last name for the record. So with that being said, I hope everybody understands. We have a little misguided turns here with the Zoom. Please bear with us, but we'll try to get it back if we do. So with that being said, I will open the public hearing and I'll read the notice. In accordance with Section 5, Chapter A of the General Laws of Walpole Zoning Bylaw, the Planning Board will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, April 29th at 7 p.m. via Zoom on the proposed amendment or change to the Walpole zoning law, which is scheduled for spring 2021. And I will read the article, and it says, to amend the zoning bylaws and the zoning map to establish stadium event parking overlay district encompassing land within approximately a half-a-mile radius from the midline of Water Street at the town of Walpole and Foxborough boundary for the purpose of allowing temporary parking as an accessory use of private property during events at Gillette Stadium or take any action thereto. The full text of the amendment is on file, and so on the maps. With that being said, the hearing is open. But before I read the other comments, as I said, is coming from the boards, I just want to explain what happened. Some of you may be wondering how it could be continued, you weren't noticed. Well, what happened here very simply is this article was proposed by a private petition, which is allowed by Mass General Law. And a private petition must have 10 certified voter signatures, which they did. They must turn the petition along with text, maps, and abutters list to the selectmen. Once it's certified that the voters are certified, then it goes on the warrant. The selectmen in turn have 10 days to transmit it to the planning board. The planning board, per Mass General Law, which is mirrored in our zoning book, has 65 days to hear this article. What happened, and if the vote at town meeting is positive, the town clerk must send it to the Attorney General for his final approval. The Attorney General is concerned with not what we write in our articles, but the timing. Like, it was proper notice given, was proper timing of each step done. The 10 days, 65 days. Was notice to the abutters given properly. And if any point of the article that did not meet this, what would happen is, even if everybody loved the town meeting, the Attorney General would doom it no good, and it would not, we couldn't use it, and you run the risk of waiting 2 years to bring it up again. what I've done doing this for a long time, almost 30 years, is I always like to look at, make sure everybody's got stuff proper. And that, not commenting on the article itself, but just what the Attorney General will look at. And what happened here was, by the time we got the abutters and there was a list and the map, it was late in the game. And then I looked at the map and the abutters list, and unfortunately, the text indicated at Foxborough line where the map was at Water Street a little bit, that had to be redone. And also the abutters list was obtained on a 300-foot radius from that area and not within the whole half mile. Everyone had to be noticed, and 300 foot beyond. By the time that was discovered, we had already moving forward to our first hearing. I sent this concern to the administration, the selectmen, and they sent it off to the town council. And what we're advised to do is open the hearing, the first hearing, continue to April 15th. And then now we've continued the hearing to the 29th. In that time frame, it allowed us to send out a notice and have advertisement, which is a key in this. It has to be in a paper 14 days in advance of the meeting in order to make the date. We just made it by today, the 29th, and that's how we all got here. So it's only been canceled it's only been continued only because just the notification, a little issue with what the applicant had for a map. So right now, according to the way we've done it, we're on target for that. I know it's a long explanation, but just want everybody to understand that no one was doing anything to it. We're just trying to make it correct. I don't want to see myself or our board do anything that would jeopardize either the public or the applicant over some incorrect thing that we could fix, and that's what we've done. With that being said, I will now, I'm sorry, what I should do is let Mr. Wiley and Cindy Hogue tell us what they have, and after that, I will read the comments from the board. With that being said, I turn it over to Jack and Cindy.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for explaining the situation regarding how we got to this point in the hearing. Just would like to do a little background, which some of you may have heard from the past, but just to go over this again so those for the first time understand where this originated. A little background information. For nearly 50 years, the stadium opened in 1971. The people in Walpole, and particularly South Walpole, have been subjected to stadium effects, including traffic jams from the football games and concerts and loud noise from the concerts, which sometimes can be heard in the center of town. Most residents of South Walpole are aware of the traffic issues during the hours before stadium events and avoid using Washington Street. However, for some who may be coming home from work, particularly during night games, or just caught up at the wrong time of day, it is possible to be waiting up to an hour to make the journey down Washington Street from Common Street. This traffic causes major safety concerns for the residents. Some frustrated residents and some enterprising residents decided to take advantage of the slow-moving traffic and offer their property for parking for friends and others for a fee. This allowed the homeowners, particularly those living on or near the most heavily traveled roads, an opportunity to make a few dollars during these stadium events. It's been noted that with the local residents offering parking on this property, the traffic in South Walpole is eased to some extent. Under the current town bylaw, it is illegal to allow parking for a fee on residentially zoned property. The town has notified the South Walpole residents of this. The stadium event parking overlay district is a 1/2 mile radius in the midline of Water Street at the Walpole-Foxborough town line. Applications would be under the jurisdiction of the building commissioner, and a permit would be based on the number of parking spaces appropriate for the property. The proposed change in the bylaw would allow residents within the proposed stadium event overlay district to submit annually an application through the building commissioner to the select board for the permit with appropriate fee based on the number of approved parking spaces. There would be no fires or tailgating permitted. The applicant could be fined or the license revoked at any time. This does require a 2/3 favorable vote at town meeting. We're open to questions. You're muted.
I'm on mute. I'm glad I was. You wouldn't like to hear what I was saying, trying to find that mouse. I will read right now for everybody comments. Okay. We asked. Typically, we send it out to Board of Selectmen, Zoning Board, Board of Health. In this particular instance, we sent it out also to the Fire Department and the Police Department, because as Jack has just alluded, we all know what goes on down there during games. We did not, the only comments we had, we did not receive any from the fire or police for whatever reason, but we do have these comments, and I'll read them now. Kyle Balduff, town engineer, and Kyle has indicated he has no related comments, engineering comments on either side. From Sewer and Water, the Board of Sewer and Water Commissioners has no comments with regard to the above subjects. And from the Board of Health, does not have any new comments. They saw it on last year, Article 23, and they attached the comments, which I will read right now. And the Board of Health, at its March 31st, 2020 meeting, voted that it feels that it's appropriate they be included each review regarding stadium parking application. The board wants to express the importance of providing restrooms, parking spaces located on impervious surfaces, means of trash disposal, as well as sidewalks, lighting to and from designated parking areas. What the Board of Health has basically said is they would like to be part of the review during when these come in. Because it is an administrative thing and it does not come in front of the planning board, that would be up to building inspector. And I'm sure he would not have an issue with that since they're already in town hall anyway. So those are the comments from the various boards and committees, and we did not have any public written comments. So with that being said, I'll open up to our board for any questions, comments they have, and then we'll turn it over to the public. So first, Sarah, you have questions or comments regarding this article?
Sure, thank you. So first, I just want to say that I'm in favor of this article, and kind of more importantly, it's my understanding that the residents of South Walpole are in favor of the article. So I just wanted to say that the purpose of my questions and my comments is really just to try to make the article as good as possible. Don't take it to mean that I'm negative on the article. So I had a question, if this use must be noted in our use table, but the building inspector has stated that it does not, so that's fine. I want to confirm with the applicants that this article creates an allowed by right use of temporary parking. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by right. Does that means if this article is passed that anybody who has property within that district can park cars? Is that what you mean?
Well, typically with site plan review, it's for uses that are allowed by right, and then the site plan review is really just to kind of regulate that use, not to prohibit it.
Yeah, I think that's correct. That with this article passed, that anyone within that district could offer that, as long as they go through the proper procedure through the building inspector.
Okay, so is there a mechanism to deny a particular person the ability to do parking at their site?
I don't think only if they didn't meet the requirements of what's in the article.
Okay.
And that's up to the the building inspector would have to issue the permit. So that in order to get the permit, you have to go, the applicant would have to go to the building inspector. He would then come and look at the property and see, okay, you can, how many sites, how many parking sites would be available on this particular lot, and then go through the rest of the procedure. Would actually, I think, winds up with the select board to approve it. But
Okay.
the building inspector is the one that would take care of any violations or whatever that would have to go through, that would go through that department.
Okay, I'm asking because within our bylaws currently, and I'm looking at section 13, site plan review, under limited site plan review. So it says that the building inspector shall approve the application as submitted or approve with conditions, except as provided in section 3 below. And in that one, so if it says, if the building inspector or designee finds that the parking expansion or parking characteristics create significant safety problem, they may require a full site plan review. So to me, I don't see a mechanism to deny it. So I'm wondering, maybe that has to go with the select board. They have to officially deny it.
I would think that would come under the building inspector to, say an applicant said, I want 20 parking spaces, and he said, well, you only have room for 10. The 10, this is the building inspector's decision, would apply.
Right, that's fine. That's like approved with conditions.
Right.
Which is fine from the bylaw. I just want to make sure that there's, that it's consistent with the other parts of the bylaw. That's my main objective. So I'd be curious to hear from the building inspector and on that. But I will move on. Have you spoken with the building inspector? Is he okay with the deadlines that are outlined in the bylaw? So 10 days and 21 days?
Yes, as far as we know, we have, I know the building inspector has reviewed the article, and we have had discussion with the building inspector, and he did not express any concern with the way it's written.
Okay. And then a question for the applicant, is there going to be like a standard application, like standard submission requirements? And can you explain the fees associated with this?
As far as a form is concerned, I would think that would fall under the building inspector's decision on what he would want for the application form to look like. We'd be certainly willing to work with him on that. And there is a fee. Now, I don't think this the article describes a fee, but a fee would be charged per parking space, and it'd be on an annual basis. In other words, each year, and whether it would be a calendar year, probably, or maybe a seasonal year that covers basically the football season would be, because that can overlap the calendar year, that there would be a per parking space fee that would go to the town.
Okay, and do you know what that fee is, or has that not been set?
It was, last year it was $7, or in 2019, it was $7 per car.
Okay. And is there like a range of a number of cars that are allowed? If you have the space, can you park like 200 cars or?
No, under the building inspector, he said that the area has to be at least 166 square feet, and he would come out and assess how many parking spots would be allowed for that property.
Okay, but it sounds like there's no upper limit. Like if you
As
know,
long as you have as long as they have.
you have the space. Okay,
And there were provisions as far as no vehicle could block or overhang into the public way. That was one of this, one of his suggestions.
okay, yeah, and those are good. And who will be enforcing this bylaw? Is it the building inspector?
It goes through the building inspector's department, yes.
Okay, to make sure, to verify that people are complying with their permit.
Yes, there would be, I think it's set up, the building inspector or his designee.
Okay. Okay, and do you know the building inspector or the town, do they have a plan to resolve any safety concerns? Are they gonna evaluate kind of the implementation of this?
Not that I know of. I think the people who will do this have been doing it. So that probably those who have been parking, would apply for the permit and go through the process with the building inspector.
Okay, so you anticipate basically a pretty seamless transition?
Yes, this is what people have been doing this for years. Since the stadium opened, people have been offering their property for parking, some charging a fee and some just allowing friends or relatives to park on their property. So it's not a new process.
Okay, and I just wanted to note that the bylaw currently notes that applicants make every effort to achieve adequate illumination of parking lots, and that is a concern of mine, so I was glad to hear the Board of Health also mentioned that, so I hope that's made a priority, that it's that it's done safely.
Okay.
And then I just had a couple, like formatting questions and suggestions. And so I'll just kind of go through them, starting from the beginning. So at the beginning of the article, it's Article 17, and it says amend section 4 with the new text. I would say it should be 4.1. And then further down where you say C overlay districts, that should be 4.2.C.
Yeah, I haven't picked those up. Where are you on? I'm looking at the article.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the article as printed in the warrant, right?
Right.
Yep, that's what we have.
So so there's a couple different sections that you're proposing to add to. You want to add to section 4, and then you want to create a new section 5E, and then you also want to add to section 13. Which is fine, but just I wanted to be specific on where you want to add.
Okay, so what needs to be, is this something that needs to be done for town meeting, or is this a clarification when it actually is implemented?
Well, I mean, I'll go through my suggestions, and my suggestions to you is to implement, all or most of them, barring other discussions. And if you had wanted to do that, I am also a town meeting member, and I could submit that as a substitute motion. There's nothing, radical that I'm proposing. It's more just formatting. So I will leave that up to you as we go through the meeting. But I know we're on a tight deadline, and I believe the moderator has requested those substitute motions by tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I think it's tomorrow at 10. So it's your article, it's your decision, but if you would like, I can do that.
You're willing to do these changes and get it to the moderator?
Yeah, I mean, listen to them. It's not my article, it's your article, so you have to agree to it. But these are my suggestions.
Okay, so that, now, so where are you on,
So right now, I'm just
you said.
under where you define SEP.
Okay,
Yes. Where it says section 5.1.
yeah,
And this next suggestion is maybe take it or leave it, but you could add a section 4.3.E, and where you would note the location and boundary of the overlay. Other overlays in the town are described in that location.
so that
So that's 4.3.E.
4.3.E.
Mhm.
And that should be, what do you want in there?
Just a description of the location and boundaries, similar to what you have under
2A.
the 5.I. You've noted that it's according to the map.
So under 2A, it's where it says about the half-mile radius.
Okay. Okay, so, all right. It's okay to put that in there. So you're taking care of the wording on that to present to the moderator?
I mean, I will use the wording that you have in the article, but yeah.
Okay, okay. I just want to make, so that will be done.
The next suggestion is just formatting. I would use capital letters instead of the lowercase, like A, when you have subpoint A, B.
Okay,
The vast majority of the bylaw has that formatting.
okay, so that's fine.
And then now, so we move on to where you're in section, that new section 5-I, under point 2A.
Okay,
And I have two comments on that. So where you've described the map, and you say map entitled, quote, Stadium Event Parking Overlay District, comma, Town of Walpole, comma, MA. And we just got today, and what I think is the latest map, and this map is titled, quote, Stadium Event Private Parking Overlay. So one of those two needs to change so that they're referring to the same thing. But if you wanted to say private parking, I think you shouldn't. I think that, you've called the overlay, the stadium event parking overlay. So I think you should take out that word private.
we'll take the private out of that.
And that's on the actual map, like on this thing.
And can that be crossed out?
I don't know. I don't know. We can ask the moderator.
Okay, yeah, I think the way it's worded in the article is to me is better.
Yeah. And then just a suggestion to add the text that this map is on file with the office of the planning board and the town clerk.
Okay,
And is it your intention to have this map included with the bylaw in our appendix? For example, the East Walpole parking relief overlay map is included in the appendix.
okay, the appendix
The appendix of the bylaw.
bylaw, no, it's probably a good idea.
Okay. So. Okay. Okay, and then next thing, just a suggestion to change Board of Selectmen to Select Board.
Where is that?
That's so we're still in 5 and it's 0.5 approval.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I get, yeah,
And then the next line down, I would just capitalize the word site plan review. So capitalize S, P, and R.
Okay.
where is it? Oh, I see, okay. Okay,
And then, so then moving on to where you want to add, some language into section 13 under the site plan review. So you want to add, new text in bold. So all applications for stadium event parking are subject to limited site plan review. So you want to add that in subsection A, but if you look at the bylaw, so you want to add, 0.3. So right before that and right after it, it refers to the two conditions. So before it says either of the following two, and then after it lists the 2 points, it says quote unquote 2 criteria. So now if we're adding a third section, I would just suggest, if any of the following 3, and then change that to 3 criteria. Does that make sense? Do you have a copy of the bylaw in front of you? Do you see it?
no, we don't have the Bible. We have the article.
Okay.
So we're back on section 3, was it?
So you want to propose, part of the article is adding text to section 13 of the bylaw, which is the site plan review.
Okay, the bylaw. Yeah, we don't have that in here. So yes, if that's applicable, yes, add that.
So just modifying a few words there.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I wanted to see what you thought. I thought you should delete that section 7, right? It seems like maybe it was unintentional, where you've noted the purpose and provisions.
So you're suggesting to eliminate that?
Well, I mean, I'm asking you, is there a reason? Because you have basically the same thing in section 1.
No, that's fine. So we'll take that out.
Is there a reason to have it both places?
There's no reason to duplicate.
Okay,
So
all right,
Take that out here.
okay,
Okay.
okay. And that's really what I have. So, I'll let you listen to the rest of the board and
Okay.
public, and if you're interested, like I said, I'm willing to offer that as a substitute motion and just,
Yeah, we would
put that on your radar, so,
appreciate that.
okay, okay,
Yes, thank you.
okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Jack.
Katie?
I don't have a lot to say. I just was wondering, Jack and Cindy, have you received any feedback from the police or fire?
Basically, when I spoke with the fire chief, he said he has no problem, but he suggested that it go through the town administrator's office for any comments. The police chief often would be in South Walpole during a stadium event, particularly football game, and he did mention to us as we were there that when parking was allowed, there was less congestion on Washington Street because people were getting cars off the road. If you've been there during a stadium event, particularly at a certain time prior to an event, again, typically a football game, Washington Street just backs up and comes to a standstill. The way they allow traffic out onto Route 1 coming from Washington Street onto Water Street, the state police control the traffic light at Route 1 and Water Street, which is Neponset Street in Walpole.
Yep.
And so nothing moves. And this is where it gets cars off the road with people offering parking. And the police chief did definitely commented that this his opinion was that it was beneficial to get the cars off the road.
So the way I look at this is, you know, I think anyone who's lived here for any period of time has gotten caught in the traffic. I mean, and I think it's different than a lot of articles we look at, because in my eyes, you know, if you live in a different part of town, you can escape it. But it's the residents of South Walpole that can't escape it. They're there, they have to deal with it every event, whether it be a football game or a concert or whatever it is. And it's a lot to deal with. So I don't have a problem with it. That being said, I'm not as impacted by it as you people are. So before I really have much of a comment, I'd like to hear from the residents of South Walpole that have logged on tonight and see if they're in favor of it. Because I don't see an issue with it, and I think it will help you guys. But I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything that someone else may have. So I'd like to hear from the residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all set?
All set.
Okay, John?
Hi. I have one question, couple of questions actually. You mentioned that each parking space must be 166 square feet. Should something be, when the application is made, should they show and indicate where the parking spaces requested are going to be on a plan so that you can regulate them in such a way as they're just not parking head to front to back on each car, and one car can't get out without the other car getting out in front of it. It should be set up in such a way as any car coming in can get out without being blocked in by another car. Has that been thought of?
So when we spoke to the building commissioner, he said that he would come out, once the person applied, he would come out to the property and tell the applicant what was allowed.
Got a fee. Listening to Sarah's comments, one of her suggestions doesn't run well with me. The last part about adding something to 13.6 in the limited site plan review. In section A, applicability, where they have 1 and 2, they're particularly listing conditions which would not allow site plan review. And yet now you're adding something that says anything fitting under this overlay is subject to limited site plan review. I agree you probably want that, but I think this location Sarah suggested is the wrong place for that. It should be somewhere showing that, as it's intended, anything within that is subject to limited site plan review. If it was placed where Sarah suggested, I believe it would basically say, you don't have to do it, as long as you're there, you have a free right to limited site plan review, and you're ignoring 1 and 2, which are there for a purpose, to prevent a large scale item or a large increase in parking spaces. So I think it has to be thought out a new place rather than in 13.6A to place this. That would better describe its purpose. Because you're going from something that limits what it can be done to allowing something to be done as of right. And that doesn't seem proper.
The article as written amends section 13.6. If you look
Yes.
on my sheets, like halfway down the second sheet, right?
The
As add.
copy I have, yes.
Right. So add new text in bold.
Yes, but
They want to add number 3, all applicants for stadium event parking and the SCP overlay are subject to limited site plan review. Right? And the other ones
but
that are subject to limited site plan review are a building addition.
I'm looking at it, yes.
Yeah, right. That's less
Which is
than
specifically
2,500.
setting limits for what is eligible, whereas this is saying it's not a limit, it's just go ahead and do it.
No, I think the
I
limited
think
site plan review, the part of the bylaw on limited site plan review outlines that the building inspector is going to look at it and review it.
Yes, but if you added that as a number 3 and said as long as it met any of the following 3 conditions, you're saying, okay, you just ignore 1 and 2. As long as you meet 3, you're in this overlay district, you could ignore 1 and 2.
No, these are just
Two are there
three
for
different, situations that would trigger a limited site plan review by the building inspector. As opposed to a full site plan review by the planning board.
Let me think about this for a moment.
Okay.
I'll weigh in on that. What they've done is add another section, number 3, and they're just specifically pointing out this particular parking will come under limited site plan. That's basically, it's all it's saying. The other stuff above it talks about buildings and structures, which this isn't either.
Can I weigh into my 2 cents, since everyone's weighing in? John, Sarah, and I are all town meeting members. And I think Sarah's comments are helpful. I just would be careful about, it's very close to town meeting. And if you go ahead and reword things, sometimes it makes people leery. So I'd just be careful how much you modify. That's all. Like a lot of what she said was just corrections. It was, stuff like that. But just, you don't want people to think you've changed things dramatically because then they're going to be nervous about it. So that's just my 2 cents. Just go easy on it.
Thanks, Katie.
Yep.
All right, I will jump in on this whole part right now. This was reviewed by town council. This is what the private petitioner wants, and no one else seemed to have an issue with it. So this is what happens with private petitions. They handpick, cherry pick what they want. And since town council's gone through it, didn't see an issue, then there should be nothing wrong with it. Now, what I will say is, you got to avoid a substitute motion, because if it's deemed improper, town meeting could love it, go to Attorney General, and you exceeded the authority. This thing could just fail at that point. So what you have now seems to fit in the book, not perfect. So you're better off leaving it alone, because like I said, a substitute motion could sink the whole deal. Not at town meeting, but it could sink it in the 60, 80 days, whatever they send it to town council. So my suggestion here, it's written like this, and rather than going through making everything what we think is better, my advice would be to leave it alone, because you don't want to have an issue later on with the Attorney General.
I think what you say, Mr. Chairman, makes some sense. I just wanted, Sarah, do you have any comments regarding that?
I mean, like I said, it's your article. But if you leave it, I'm still gonna vote in favor of it, because I think, it's generally a good article. But if I'm gonna put my name to something, I like it to be, complete, and I like things to match up. So it's your call.
No, I agree with your concern and your comments. I think Mr. Conroy makes a good point. This has been reviewed by town council. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there's anything like, legally wrong with it or whatever. It's more,
Okay.
most of my comments are formatting and,
Well,
readability kind of thing.
Okay, I think it might be better, as pointed out by Mr. Conroy, just to leave it as is, particularly since it has been reviewed by town council. They've had more than one opportunity to review the article. So I think it kind of makes sense to go along with that, and just to avoid any potential issue, assuming it gets through town meeting, that then it goes to the Attorney General and they find something there. So that, I think, if you're okay with that, I think we probably just leave it as is, for town meeting to consider.
Okay, yeah, it's your call.
Okay, thank you.
John, you all set? Okay. I have some comments on this. I got a bunch, as a matter of fact, and I just want to indicate, first off, I'm here to serve everybody, so everybody understands all the issues or nuances of this, because most people aren't involved in this type of stuff. And I just want to make sure everybody understands it. So I'm not giving yay or nay to what's good or what's bad. It's just what is there, okay? For everybody in the audience, an overlay is just a special way of allowing a certain type of zoning change without going into the zoning provisions, like your residential, your commercial. It's like putting a blanket over. But they have a thing called the underlying. So what you gotta understand is, and I see a lot of stuff that can come up on this, is if in the article it addresses certain things, but it's absent of other issues, it reverts back to the underlying zone and those rules. Meaning that if you had 166 square feet, you've defined it. Now, the parking we have now, I think, is 9 by 18. That doesn't mean you can make it 1 by 165 feet, but that's kind of silly. But there are some things that aren't necessarily addressed that will come up, okay? The other thing is, this is a private petition, so you're allowed to, whatever you want, and it gets approved, that's fine. That's the way the state works. And the article is based upon a half mile, inside a half mile, plus, if you read it, also anything that, if you have property that touches. So that is, you'll have a few more people that just may nick it. I can imagine if someone wants to make a few bucks, they're going to have to examine that line. It's a matter how thick that line is painted to see whether you make it on the scale of a 1 to 40. So this article does is allow everybody to do the half mile, and it overrides the underlying zone. What the limited site plan was something that developed since I've been on the board. We had many applicants come in and they wanted to put an awning. They wanted to put, 10 by 10 foot on their building, which made no sense. So, and I kind of paralleled that after Norwood, after talking to a few people, is we based upon 2,500 square feet or 5% of floor area, because it didn't make sense. Because basically when we do a site plan, we're only concerned, we don't care what you do for your business. We're only concerned basically the in and out and how you're going to access it. But with this site plan though, this limited, you still must have it prepared by, I'm going to go through the items that a lot of people may not understand, or if they're thinking of doing it, they have to understand this, is you still have to have it be prepared by an engineer. That's what it says in under limited site plan. That is not an exemption from this. So that could cost a few bucks. When you're dealing with limited site plan, there's no notice to your neighbors. So it's just you go in, and whether you get it or not, they wouldn't know till a day if you were parking cars. That's another. There is no public hearings for these under limit. Next item is, this is done in accordance, in town hall has been mentioned, with the building inspector, town engineer, and now you're going to have the Board of Health want to be part of it, which is fine. We've done that in the past. You do have something else to be concerned too, is that you're not exempt, and if I get Jack's smile, from conservation, because you can't, it's 100 feet, Jack, is that correct?
100 feet buffer zone, yes.
Okay, so if your yard backs up and you're in a swamp, you may not be able to do it. If it's 100 feet away, you're all set. So you may have to do a filing if you're thinking of it, and if you're high and dry, you know, good luck to you. Now, there's certain things that aren't necessarily mentioned in here, other than 166 feet. And unfortunately, this is going to be a more administrative thing than anything to do with our planning board. And it's going to come down to the building inspector. Is on the other line, they talk about drainage, they talk about paving and all that stuff. The other thing, it talks about setbacks from your neighbors, fire lanes, and so on. I'm just bringing that out. I don't know how that's going to be handled. I wish there would have been some input, at least, if not from the building inspector, at least the selectmen or town administration, as what they're thinking for that. So I just want to bring that out. It's not, he's just not going to run down and see Mike Yanovich and say, hey, I want 30 spaces and games tomorrow. It's a little bit more involved than that. Okay, everybody understands it. Now, if you think it's okay, I don't get any issues one way or another. The little, I call it the bugaboo, but this is something that maybe it's done administratively. The stadium events. It says all stadium events. Well, we know that you could have out in the parking lot Corvette night. I mean, that's a stadium event. But reality is nobody's going to come down and park in South Walpole when there's only 100 cars up there for that. So we understand that. So when this first came out, I talked to Chief John Carmichael about this and what his deal is with the stadium. And it sounded pretty correct what they have to deal with crafts. Any time there's an event over 40,000 people, then they have to have all police present. So what that means, I think that must mean that he must control at least 40,000 or enough for 40,000 people's spaces on his own land. And then once he gets beyond it, it's all the parking along Route 1 there and so on and so forth. That, I don't think any people who want to do that would object to it. Matter of fact, I don't think you'd be out there holding a sign, park here for soccer. So that's one of the things that you have to understand that, I don't think if they said 40,000, it'll affect anybody. Matter of fact, I think it's not a big deal. One thing I would point out doesn't affect necessarily anybody trying to do it now is and this is more for the building end of it, all the parking lots on Route 1 that are now have been licensed, they will fall under this. They're going to be happy because they're going to add a lot of parking to them based upon what's being said at that rate. So that has nothing to do with you, Cindy, or Jack, but I just point that out to anybody who's watching. Now, there's a hidden fee. Now, I don't know if most people understand it, but when they built the stadium, any private parking for stadium events must pay the state a kick on every space. Are you familiar with that, Jack and Cindy?
Yes.
How much is that per year, per space? Do you know?
I think the church, paid $150 in 2019.
For how many spaces?
80 spaces.
That's it? I had a couple guys whining about parking lots up there telling me how much it costs because you got to pay that to the state ahead of the ahead of the first preseason game. So that's something the state and also the town you got to pay a little kick to them too, and that's based upon the number of spaces approved, not number of spaces used. Don't know what happened this past season. I would hope that they would have refunded everybody's money. And my final comments is, since we didn't have any really input from the selectmen or whatever, and I assume they're going to have to do this, is the hours of operation, meaning, how much before and how much after. I think it was pointed out by the Board of Health, dumpsters, police, Porta Johns, etc. That doesn't concern us at this point, and that's going to be down the road. So it may look good right today, but who knows what's going to be brought out on that as far as costs to people, if it's worthwhile or so on. But I just wanted to bring that out. Would have been nice if they had said something to us that they'll follow this like they regulate the ones on Route 1, but that would have been nice. But what I want to point out to everybody is it's not just running down and getting a permit once it's approved. Although I might go down there if you got it Saturday. If I live down there on Monday morning, I'd be right at Mike's office saying, yeah, I want my permit, because none of the other stuff has already been put in motion yet. And they get X amount of time to approve it. So with that being said, I just wanted to show everybody all the issues surrounding this. Mine is, I don't have skin in the game. You know, I don't even live near it. And the fact that, you know, this is a neighbor to neighbor neighborhood. And, you know, if the neighbors love it, I don't have an issue with it. Neighbors hate it, let them hate it. So I think that's why I'm also wanting to hear from the whole neighborhood who's in favor, who isn't, or if you're in favor, I understand. If you're not in favor, what might be there that we can understand, or at least the petitioners can understand. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to the public, and bear with me because we have Mike Donovan, our IT guy, who's the host, and I'm not sure how it's going to be done, but if I guess you raise your hand or something to that effect. So we'll start, and I'll open to the public, and I do ask you your name and address, and then state your concerns. A lot of people I can see their last names, other people I just see first names. So with that being said, I'll open it up to any members of the public.
Yeah, I'm a member of the public. I'm Steve Baradnelli. I live down at 8 Putnam Drive. Okay, and my opinion is I want nothing to do with this. I don't like this idea at all. I think it's going to create a worse mess down here as far as traffic is concerned. I know the chief of police has his reasoning for it. My reasoning is this, is that now we're going to be inviting people into our neighborhood, okay, to park on people's lawns, and that's going to increase traffic. It's bad enough before games, but now we're going to be increasing traffic after games. And what I believe of these people after games is going to be, they're probably going to be, they may not be technically drunk, but they're going to have been drinking probably for a pretty good while after the game. And now they're going to be driving through a neighborhood, really a residential neighborhood, a very residential neighborhood, after a game, drinking, and the street is already treated as if it's a raceway anyways. And I don't like that at all. Another thing about this, to me, the increased traffic is going to be the increased amount of litter that is going to be down there. It's already a mess. Nobody ever comes down and cleans it up, and now it's going to get worse. You know, and I don't like that at all. And some of that trash down there is pretty bad, you know, and nobody makes an effort to clean it up. Certainly the town doesn't. There are other things about it. There are things about, you know, if this was approved and people are parking on somebody's property, does that make it the homeowner's responsibility to monitor somebody who's going to be drinking on their property? I know they're not going to be allowed to. I know they're going to be told don't. But we all know people are going to try and get over on this. You know that as well as I do. A homeowner sees some guy sitting in his car. He opens a beer. They go over. They say, you're not supposed to be doing that. Okay, right? And the guy says, okay. And now he's got an open beer, and there's a couple of things he's got to do. What's he going to do with that open beer now? Is he going to empty it out on this homeowner's property? And at that point, is the homeowner required to call the police? Now you've got a traffic jam going on down there, and now the police can't get through to address an issue of a homeowner who has somebody who's potentially drinking on their property. I don't like this at all. What about bathrooms, guys? You know, you got some guy who shows up on your property. I think they open the gates to to all the games 3 hours before game time. So now you got somebody on your property at 10 o'clock in the morning, okay, right? And just because he wants to beat traffic, okay? So he gets down, he's parked on your property at 10 o'clock in the morning. What if at 11 o'clock in the morning, this guy figures out now he's got to go to the bathroom? Where's he going to go to the bathroom? You know, what's he going to be do? Dropping trowel in the middle of Washington Street? Come on, you know? And so I don't think that is right at all, you know? I certainly don't want my neighbors, somebody from my neighbor, you know, going hiding into the border bushes of my property and going to the bathroom in there. I wouldn't want that to be happening. And trust me when I tell you this, I live on Putnam Drive. People seem to think that they can drive down Putnam Drive and whip it out in our bushes on the street. I've seen it. I've had to go out and yell at these people to stop. You know, so I don't like this. I don't like this at all. You know, and another thing is I want to say is, again, this is a very residential neighborhood. There's an elementary school down there. There's a church down there. There's a post office down there. You know, we've got a lot of children in the neighborhood. On Putnam Drive alone, my children are all adults, okay, right? But all my neighbors have school-age children. They're all school-age children. You know, now you've got Monday night games, Sunday night games, and Thursday night games, where you may be having people walking down Washington Street now, half in the bag and talking very loudly in a residential neighborhood. I mean, like, this is not right. I don't like this one bit. You know, and what about, I know Boyden tried to do something with this a few years back, you know, and it was shot down. And one of the big issues was insurance. You know, what about insurance on the property for these people? You know, if there should be some kind of component, if this was approved, that anybody who gets a permit or wants a permit is going to have some kind of, I think, increased insurance on their property, not only to protect themselves, but I think to protect the town. You know, there must be some legal thing here somewhere that this could happen that I'm not aware of. I got a bunch of other notes here, guys, that I just want to make sure that I'm covering all I wanted to cover. I'm a little bit nervous about this, but, you know, and so those are my basic issues. I think it really raises a real big traffic safety issue in a residential neighborhood, and I don't like it one bit. There's just too much already going on that's bad, and this is going to make a bad situation even worse. Thank you for listening to me.
All right, Steve, I'll address your comments. And your comments basically is not directed at us here tonight, only because it's a zoning change. That's what I said, alluded to earlier. There's going to have to be a lot of not even guidelines, rules. And one of the things with a permit, and even in this particular permit, if they violate it, it can be revoked. I would assume that all the rules, when they're written out, is they will be responsible for their own litter, their own bathrooms. I don't know how that's going to go. I understand what you said. At this juncture, I wish we had something, or it's these guidelines, what they have to do out on Route 1. At least you'd know. I haven't seen those guidelines. I'm not sure. Those are stuff that they're gonna have to craft. But right now, like I said, I'm not avoiding it. This is a zoning change. But everything you said, yeah, all experienced it. So, and that will, if it does pass, all those concerns are going to have to be addressed somehow, some way. Okay. And thank you for your comments. Who would like to go next? Who's next? Anybody?
Mr. Chairman, this is Rob Belcher speaking.
Okay, see if I can find you.
I live at 15 Neponset Street in South Walpole.
Okay,
I just want to share Jack's original comment that this parking has been going on for a very long time. And I think a lot of people have been doing it perhaps without any rules to follow. And I think having an overlay where there are rules, and the fact that the building inspector has to come down and look at your property and determine how many cars you can have, I think that's a positive. Because for the past, well, since the stadium originally opened in the fall of 1971, it's been pretty much willy-nilly, although there was a time when they were not allowing parking, but that didn't seem to be enforced. So I think this is a good thing. And the fact that there would be rules, ground rules for getting an application, the fact that people have to put out some money to get an application, those are all things that make it a little more legitimate. And those are my comments, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Can I go?
Sure.
Harry Brusades. I live at 1930 Washington Street Extension. I've owned the property there since 1999. So a couple questions I have are, you know, if we have a $7 fee, what is to say that that can't be $20 2 years from now? You know, what is the extent of, I don't want to say money grab here, but if this is basically imposing a tax on our residents that are currently parking cars for a fee. My property in particular, I've had my friends and family come down to the property and we hang out and we walk up to the game. My property is a 3-unit property. So even if I'm not having a game and people are just hanging out at my house, they're friends, I could be looking at 13 to 15 cars. It has nothing to do with the game. So I guess I'm a little skeptical in regard to the enforcement of some of these rules and regulations. That being said, I mean, we've been living our lives and dealing with the Patriot Stadium events for, we've said, over 50 years. You know, I think things have been fine. I know we're trying to address some safety concerns, but I don't really see how these rules and regulations are addressing safety concerns. Is it really about safety, or is it about tax revenue? You know, the tax and this fee that's being collected, where is that money going? And then where is it being spent? Who's showing up on a Sunday and walking on my property? Those are questions I have that I think need to be addressed. I've got a pretty big lot there. I could put a ton of cars there, but I don't want to start running a business on my personal residence. I think it's been fine that we've had people come by, say hello, and go up to the game. And these have been friends of mine. So I've been very dismayed, though, about the police stops up on Washington Street. People being interrogated in regard to where are you going, who do you know, are they charging you down there? I think that's a little bit of infringement of our civil rights. You know, South Walpole was Washington Street was Route 1 back in the late 1700s. My property was the original toll house when they used to do horse and carriage. So we've got many, many grandfathered rights down there when it comes to parking, whether it be 50 years of dealing with the Patriots or 300 years dealing with horse and carriage and everything else. So my own personal feeling in asking around in my neighborhood, I've only heard one thing was, leave us alone. This has been fine for 50 years. I don't know why they need to have this government oversight. I haven't seen a major issue happen, whether it be safety, whether it was an accident, whether somebody was hurt. I think everybody's been able to police themselves and govern themselves accordingly. And I just don't feel this article is warranted at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Peter Drogan. I live at 7 Wildwood Lane, and I've been here with the family for 30 years. I'm also a RTM from Precinct 5. And I share many of the safety concerns that have been discussed here tonight previously by Steve, Harry as well. I think that there are many unanswered questions associated with this and problems that are on the horizon without clear solutions laid out at this point in time. And I think it would be reckless to move forward with this without those details ironed out. This is a residential neighborhood. We all know that. I think this action could bring on potential problems neighbor to neighbor. You could have a neighbor that's not in favor of it, another neighbor that is, and has 30 cars sitting on their lot, and a variety of the issues that would result from that have been described here previously tonight could create more problems. So I think before this thing would move forward, certainly we need clarification of what some of the safety concerns and addressing those issues that have been brought up before we could even consider this again. I think we have to proceed very cautiously. And it was mentioned earlier that, maybe in so many words, South Walpole residents are in favor of this. I'd be curious to hear about the source of that statement and any polling that has been done, and kind of the source behind that statement earlier tonight. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the discussion on this.
Thank you. Next. Anybody?
Hi, this is Terry Fitzpatrick from 32 Water Street. Been here for 18 years. The stadium was here before I got here. When I purchased my house, I knew it was going to be busy on Sundays. Every Sunday, I have 12 or 15 cars here, and I always will. I'm a season ticket holder. My friends are season ticket holders. So I guess this doesn't affect me much because I'm always going to have a packed lawn here. I've talked to many neighbors just on Water Street, and I don't know anybody who is not in favor of this. Actually, I'm pretty happy now if we do have this, my friends don't get stopped at the corner by the police. And I know the police, they don't want to be stopping people, but they have to. So I just want to let everybody know that I am 100% in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, this is Cheryl Ivitz, and we are at 70 Shufelt Road in South Walpole. I've been here my whole life. My grandmother used to own this house, so we've had friends and family here forever. And right now, we're kind of being told that we can't have the friends and family sometimes because they were putting a limit on how many cars could be at your house. We have kids, our kids have friends. So it's not where we can just have people over anymore. There's now certain rules and regulations that are being enforced. So I guess we definitely are in favor of this so that we can just have people over, whether or not they're going to the game. We were having parties at that time, and we've had complaints from different people, meaning the police had come down and said, you cannot be having this many cars at your house. So there are limits in place now where you cannot just have people at your house. So I think people maybe don't understand the full scope of what's going on down here at the moment either. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was not aware that there is any bylaw of limited number of cars that can be in your yard. You know, you have your own party or whatever. You know, everybody parks on the lawn. So I'm not aware of that, but that is something I haven't heard. So that too needs to be explored. Next.
Chairman, that would only be if they were charging people. If you've got friends and family showing up, this is America. People can come to your house.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Harry, is the fact that you could have 400 cars if you could fit them, and they're all friends and family. You're not charging them. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. If you charge them, you know, when you're going to make money, that's when things start to get regulated. So I do understand that, but hearing his Ivets that they've been probably thinking that they were making money off it. So, but anyway, I'll go on to the next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Donna DeBoule, also 26 Water Street. And on Cheryl's point, we did get letters years ago, and there is a town bylaw that says at any given time, you are not allowed to have more than 10 cars on your property at a given time. So, I mean, I know it's never been enforced. I've been up the center of town on the 4th of July, and people have had their parties, but this does become affected to us during stadium events. They will come and tell us, you have 11 cars. I got a letter from somebody in the town, I believe it was the building inspector, that said I had 11 cars on my property and I was in violation. So there is a town bylaw out there that states 10 cars at a given time. I think it's ridiculous. But as you said, I've been doing this. I've had friends over now that started out as complete strangers 15 years ago. Now some of them are my best friends. I've never had people pee in my yard, pee in my neighbor's yard. They're very respectful. As far as restrooms, they're in my house. A lot of us that do this know the people. We don't take strangers off the road. And I know some people would be in that position to do that, but I think a lot of us are just in the position we want to be able to have our friends at the house.
Okay, I appreciate that. Didn't know it was there. I myself violated a lot. I'm sure we all do. We all have, but they don't seem to enforce it the other parts of town. So
Right.
I think we all know why that was done. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Next.
Yeah, I'll speak, Mr. Chairman. Mike Yanovich, Building Commissioner. Thank you for segueing into that. We don't do it in other parts of town. We absolutely do it in other parts of town. The building department is complaint-based, as you know, from some of the emails I've received from you. So we are complaint-based. This enforcement action has been taking place since probably the 80s, I believe. We found pictures in the attic from issues that were going on back in the 80s and probably prior to that as well. Every year for the past, I don't know how many years, we've been out there enforcing, yes, there is bylaw sections that specify how many vehicles you can have on your lot. There is also a parking section that specifies to the gentleman's concern about the parking back in the 1700s. There are bylaw sections that specify where parking for a fee can take place. So we have bylaw sections in place. That's what we are enforcing, and we are complaint-based. What we could do here, Mr. Chairman, is not listen to complaints or listen to complaints based on who is complaining and say, okay, this person has been in town for 35 years, we'll answer this complaint. You know what, the person that complained has only been here for 10 years, we're not gonna answer this complaint. When you start selecting complaints and problems like that, Mr. Chairman, I'll finish and then we can go from there. I was just gonna make a point to your enforcement issues there. So I didn't know if you wanted to. So we're not selective enforcement. We enforce based on complaints. So as far as in other parts of town, we don't have the same issues on Patriots Day games. We go out there and we answer complaints based on citizen complaints. That's what we do. We do it based on the traffic. We do it based on the overcrowding. We do it based on the fire department having an issue. There are requirements for the commercial lots that are up on Route 1. We've tried to enforce the same requirements regarding fires and drinking and tailgating and whatnot in the residences. But again, this has been happening for so long. We've done our best to enforce it. We're trying to put a set of regulations in here that allows us to go ahead and enforce through a license the allowances that we're trying to put forth here. So again, we're complaint-based. This is a citizen petition. Let town meeting decide what the issue is here. Let town meeting decide whether or not this goes forward. And then subsequently, let the Attorney General's office decide whether or not there are technical issues. We have a set of department heads that are very capable of reviewing the applications and imposing conditions on each lot so that we do protect. Nothing's gonna be perfect, right? People are talking about people urinating and drinking. I was under the impression that that was happening already. Some people said, no, the people are very respectful, but we're trying to put a set of regulations in here that allow us to go out and enforce and write violations based on that regulation, right? So we don't have a dog in the fight. All I know is come, opening day, we're probably going to be out there again if there's no regulation, writing the same violations. And people made reference to civil rights and whatnot. That's not for me to decide. That'll be for, people in another venue to decide. But the proposal here is to regulate something that's been going on for a very long time and put a set of regulations in that we can actually go out there and enforce. So that's where we are. I appreciate you giving me the time and being so inviting. Thank you very much.
I do. If Mr. Yanovich, since a lot of these questions have come up and none of us can answer, it's not a zoning thing, is how do you anticipate the park? Can you give any insight so people have some understanding what you're going to be looking for so that they understand? I know it's not the zoning, but that's kind of like what comes next and, and what is being done on Route 1. How do you guys, what do you got for rules? Just explain to everybody because you already have some in place. Could you enlighten people so they're not in the dark on all this?
So again, we already have a set of rules up on Route 1, and believe it or not, it's the fire department, which is, I don't know why that happened, that enforces the regulations of parking up on Route 1. When it comes to, so we're talking about zoning here. We're talking about an overlay that we're putting in place. The second part of this is a licensing scheme. With that licensing, we will put in place requirements for the size of vehicle. And again, this is the second time we've been through this, so we vetted this all out at each town board last time this came through. But I'll, for the sake of repeating again for the people that are in attendance tonight, we'll put square footage requirements in for number of vehicles. We will put through the health department requirements for toilets, obviously no tailgating and no outdoor fires. So we'll put those regulations in place. With the second part of this, if this passes, we will put the licensing requirements. So the process will be the department heads through limited site plan will vet the application, and subsequently will turn that recommendation over to the selectmen so they can go ahead and impose their licensing requirements on each site based on our recommendation. And our recommendation will include the number of vehicles allowed on site. And that takes into factor the fire department, that takes into factor police response, proximity to structures. We'll take all of those things into account when we go ahead and review.
Just so everybody understands where you stop and the police start, I assume everybody knows, but public drinking or that is not in your bailiwick. It's more of a police enforcement. Would that be correct?
Correct. We're out there for the zoning violations only.
But if it is found that they're doing, like allowing people to drink and that on the property or problems, you would be the one that would revoke or recommend to the selectmen to revoke the license?
It would be a joint effort between fire, police, and building.
Okay, so everybody understands where you are. You got a whole consortium of people that are involved at the start, and to enforce it will be there to make sure it happens. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so everybody understands you're involved from the minute they walk in to the last game of the season. So, and you and everyone else along there. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments? Looking here. Everybody all set? No questions. I don't want to shut anybody off before I do. Okay, someone has a phone.
I've got a comment, sir.
Yep.
Yeah, hi. My name's Tony DeMarco. I live at 55 Water Street in South Walpole.
Yep.
And I just want to say, I've been out in Walpole lived out in Walpole maybe 45 years. I've been in South Walpole for around 30 years. I'm extremely in favor of this. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's a lot of people there, whether it's in Walpole or Water Street, that may have lost their jobs or are looking for a second income. It's favorable to the town itself. If the town, to supplement any costs, if they're making anything there. I just want everybody to know that I'm extremely in favor of this. I've never seen any issues over a number of years I've been there. And I just want to mention that. And the police is always in the area. Any backup of traffic is normally not related. It actually enhances taking vehicles off the main road when it comes to parking. And most of that traffic is because of that, intersection at Norfolk Street and when Water Street goes into Norfolk and Route 1 there, because they don't have a right turn only. And that's basically why we have traffic that backs up there. And it's favorable to take some of that traffic off the main road and help some of the residents in South Walpole to try to make a buck or two. And I just want to say that I'm definitely in favor of this. I've never seen any issues, and I've been there for 30 years. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So I don't see anybody who's asking for anything. All right. Well, since there's nobody else from the public, Jack, Cindy, would you like to wrap up what you've heard right now?
Just make a comment, which is kind of repeating what some people have said, but the stadium's been there for 50 years. Until recently, I lived on Washington Street near Boyden School, and I understand what the individual said about trash, but I pick up trash in front of my house every week, whether there's a stadium event or not. It's not just stadium people. The traffic has been there for 50 years. There won't be, I think the benefit, and the police chief did notice this, that when parking was stopped in South Walpole during the last football season where parking was going on, was at 2019, that the traffic was worse, and it was actually backed up to Common Street on Washington Street, with people allowing, when parking was happening, there was less traffic. It wasn't that there was no traffic, but there was less of congestion on that. So I think the people who are indicating that they're in favor of it, it's just, this legitimizes and does provide some income and puts it, as the building inspector just said, Mr. Yanovich said, that it regulates what's going on and gives the town the opportunity to regulate it. So I think it's just, this is what should be considered, and preferably would go to town meeting and let town meeting decide what they want to, how this should go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That being said, I'll go back to the board. Katie, you're the one who wanted to defer your comments.
I think we have heard from a lot of residents. I think it makes sense from what I've heard from the building inspector. I think we've vetted it, and I think it's a bigger issue than just planning board tonight. I think we should move it on to town meeting and let them decide on Saturday.
Okay. You're a town meeting member.
I am.
Okay. John?
I can't think of anything that hasn't been addressed right now, so I'm good.
Okay. Sarah?
Sorry, yeah, all set.
All set? Okay. I am too. So, Katie, the way you said it, it's a little different. What, do you have that in some type of motion?
I think we should take a vote and move it forward. I make a motion to vote the article in favor.
Favorable action?
Oh, okay. What I was getting out of you, Kate, you said this should move on to town meeting, like you were just gonna kind of like FinCom says, vote at town meeting or something to that effect. Which, that is what you want.
I would like us to have a positive vote, so that when it goes to town meeting, it's represented that way.
Oh, okay. All right, first off, I'll make a motion to close the hearing so that we can vote. So I'll make a motion to close. Katie?
Second.
Okay, now Katie? You say aye. Aye. Did you say aye? John?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Jack? Aye, okay, so hearing is closed. Okay, would you like to make a motion, Kate?
I make a motion in favor of the article.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second. Motion for favorable action.
Sarah, okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussions? All those in favor, say aye. We'll start again. Kate?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Jack? Aye. Okay. Now it's on to town meeting, and at that point, it can be debated by town meeting members. So we all understand the issues that people have presented, which most didn't really have anything to do with us from a zoning perspective, other than it's being allowed. So with that being said, I do encourage anybody that has an issue with it tonight, at least if you're not a town meeting member, at least reach out to a town meeting member to voice your concerns so that can be brought up by your town meeting rep. Because everybody did have good points. It was not a bad point here tonight. It's just that everybody's experience. And so I encourage that. And I thank everybody for being here. And with that being said, we do not have any other activities, so I'll make a motion to.
At one point, I just want to raise while we're here, remember that this is a zoning article, so when you speak to your town meeting reps, remind them that this requires a 2/3 vote to go into effect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. So everybody understands that. So with that being said, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second from John. All those in favor? John?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Katie?
Aye.
Jack? Aye. Okay, with that being said, thank you for all endearing this Zoom session, but I do appreciate it, and good night to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.